Hi friends, today we're going to continue our series, Designing a Successor to the New Republic. This time, we're moving on to our defense fleet, starting today with our Navy.
Jake, you are majorly overthinking this.
You underestimate my power.
Hello there.
Starting out, we're going to go over the structure. At the top of the hierarchy is the numbered fleet. This oversees multiple sector fleets and handles galactic scale operations. This fleet is mobilized for major threats and high priority missions. They often include our heaviest assets, such as the Onager-class Star Destroyer, a rare siege weapon deployed by the Empire. We would use only one or two per numbered fleet, and it is much more useful than a Death Star. They're used for orbital bombardment and breaking sieges using their heavy siege turbo laser. It's a more efficient version of what the First Order used with the Manticore Dreadnought. Also, after the First Order War, recovered Zeiss and Star Destroyers would probably make these much cheaper than the already, I'd say, fairly cheap 300,000 credits. They also include a couple fighters for support. Now, moving on to our sector fleets, these manage operations across multiple sectors and include the actual operational groups. Support ships at this level would be the Altor-class replenishment ship, which was used by the Empire with some docking arms and large fuel containers in order to entirely refit multiple Star Destroyers at one time. For additional logistics, we would use the Class 4 container transport. The Class 4 container transport was used by the Empire, and it could carry a ridiculous amount of external cargo pods for all kinds of dry goods. This would be perfect for resupplying our fleets when they don't need to be refurbished by our Altor replenishment ships. For escorts, we would also use the CR-90 Corvette for anti-starfighter and for patrols for our system card, a Coast Guard equivalent that we'll mention in the next video. Also, its smaller cousin, the DB-20 frigate, would be perfect as a picket ship to harass enemy starfighters outside of the fleet, as well as be doing torpedo runs and missile runs on enemy capital ships, especially frigates and other corvettes. We'd also use at this level the Interdictor-class cruiser, which could block off hyperspace routes using gravity well projectors. Most of these ships would also include Marine security forces, and some would include Marine droppers who specialize in close quarters shipboarding operations and urban combat. They would use the Draught-class boarding ship for these operations, which could actually embed themselves through the hull of ships, as we've seen in the Clone Wars, and carry up to 8 soldiers. Boarding operations normally result in defenders holding off hangar bays and airlocks. However, this would provide some confusion and ability to route these defenders. Now, moving on, our major assault group would be our Naval Assault Group. They are the core of major operations, combining capital ships, starfighters, and support units. Our flagship would be the Venator-class Star Destroyer, which operationally could carry about 180 starfighters. Some statistics show up to 420, but this is likely if they were packed together. This would be where most of our naval starfighters would be deployed from, focusing on bombers for providing heavy firepower. In our next video, we'll go into our Starfighter Corps and talk more specifically about what types of ships they would use. They would be protected by Starhawk battleships, which provide heavy fire support. This is the first ship commissioned by the New Republic, which actually was made out of two old Imperial Star Destroyers and meant specifically to go up against remnant Star Destroyers. It also has a heavy tractor beam weapon, which could hold ships in place, as we saw in Star Wars Squadrons. Moving on, Marine assault groups include Venators that have, instead of starfighters, been equipped with Marine landing forces and TIE Strikers. They'd also be escorted by Pelta-class medical frigates, and together they make expeditionary battle groups for invasions. The Army would actually include one of its own ships, however, it would not be utilized in these fleet groups, and instead would only be deployed to carry soldiers to a planet that is already controlled in space by the Navy. And these would be the Acclimator-class assault ship. This is a versatile ship that we saw in the Clone Wars, actually before the Venator came out. It was used to deploy 1,600 clones, if you don't include their vehicles. They are ideal for planetary evasions and operations where you would want to land massive brigade-sized components of soldiers directly onto the battlefield and landing zones. This is great for providing logistics since you're able to basically put huge equipment and massive amounts of cargo. It also has a .6 class hyperdrive, which is exceptionally fast. Now, it was much more expensive than the Venator Star Destroyer, which is why we'd use the Venator for our Marines, which would be able to be air assault deployed, like we saw in the Second Battle of Geonosis. They are escorted by 2 or 3 naval patrol groups, which conduct reconnaissance and anti-piracy patrols. These patrol groups include Quasar Fire-class cruisers, carriers, which can deploy up to 48 starfighters. They'd be escorted by Defender-class cruisers, which are New Republic patrol cruisers created by the Mon Calamari during the height of the New Republic. We would also use the MC-30C attack frigate. It's a Mon Calamari cruiser very similar to the MC-40. However, it had a weak hull and focused on its shields and speed, as well as its complement of capital-grade proton torpedoes, cluster bombs, and turbo lasers for close hit-and-run attacks on enemy capital ships. We would use these like a submarine. And lastly, the IGV-55 Gazanti is a listenership electronic warfare and reconnaissance version of the Gazanti, which would be great for trying to prevent sensors of enemy ships and to hopefully spot and protect any ships coming in towards the fleet. So there you have it. These are the ships we use in our Navy, and in the next video we'll talk more specifically about our starfighters and our law enforcement branch of the Navy, known as the System Guard. Thank you for watching, and if you have any suggestions or think that there's anything we missed, please comment below. Subscribe if you are interested in more of our deep dive discussions on Star Wars lore. And as always, may the Force be with you. We'll see you next time.